Greetings. Salam alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Hotep. What up, though? This is Elder Blacklight in the 313 Motown. Detroit. Where it's a blizzard. But I seen it worse than this. The name of this cut on January the 12th, revelations reflect the intelligent life force revelations reflect the intelligent life forms, put it like that. That sounds more better. Life forms. Elder Blacklight, aka Omar Kareem Nasser Muhammad Shabazz Allah, all those good names, I claim to fame. Trying to be a righteous Muslim in a world of so much evil and wickedness and deception. I'm on a mission for Allah. Brother Blacklight, with the flavor to Savior and the kind of knowledge you won't get in college. I am an FOI soldier. My word is my bond. I will give my life before my word shall fail. I am an FOI soldier in the Nation of Islam. My duty is to unite my people, black people, and to protect the women and children of my nation. I will perform my duty faithfully, regardless to whom or what. My life and my death are all for Allah. I will be loyal and obedient to the Supreme Being, Allah, in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, who I submit. I fear none but Allah. He has the authority over me. To him and him alone, I submit my will to do his will. The Lord of all the worlds, keep me on the straight path, on the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, and not on the path of those that go astray. Especially after they have heard thy teachings. So shall we get started? Yeah, let us go on ahead on and get into it. I'm naming this joint here Revelations Reflect the Intelligent Life Form. I started to say life force, but it's all the same. Revealing revelation. Let's go into the definition of the word revelations, because that's where my mind takes me in Revelations. Revelations is the last book of the gospel of Jesus. Revelation comes from the word revealing something disclosed, to make known something hidden. Revealing comes from revelation, or revelations comes from the word revealing, and all it means is something disclosed or to make known something hidden, or to make known something hidden. Reflect. It's got 2 or 3 meanings: to throw back light, heat, or sound. That's what reflect first meaning says. The second meaning is to give back an image of, to bring as a result, to think seriously, to think seriously. This is the ultimate reality viewing. They talk about reality TV, but in my videos, or even my live stream, what do I do? A lot of people can't get to what I do, because I just don't sit up here and talk. What I do is I go to YouTube, and whatever they got historically, what's happening now, what they want to happen, it's all on YouTube. And different people from different points of view do their thing on YouTube. And you got a choice to watch what you want to watch. If you disagree with a person's point of view or with a person's doctrine, just change the channel. You ain't got to watch that. So let me define my name. Blacklight, elder Blacklight. You know what elder means. Blacklight, defined as ultraviolet, or designating those rays that are just beyond the violet in the visible spectrum of the visible spectrum, defining soul, school. Soul, S-O-L, music, the fifth tone of the diatonic scale. Since I'm a musician, the particular cut, my theme song, is called Love Song to My Black People all over this world or planet. The second meaning for soul is the sun personified. The third meaning is a Greek god, the sun god. Myth. It's a myth, but my birth sign in real life is July, the 7th month. Now let's go to school. That's what we're going to do, going to school today. What do that definition mean? A group following the same beliefs or method. So only those that I appeal to might dig what I'm saying, because I'm saying things in a way that you're not used to. I'm displaying things in a way that I haven't seen others. And YouTube, they all say that the YouTube community might not dig the way or how I say it, so they might not show it. Or they might say I'm violating the copyright rules. And they might restrict if they don't like what I'm saying. You know, but all I'm doing is just like the way I look at it is, say for instance, I invite you over to my crib to look at television. You know, I say, well, come on over, man, let's watch some tube together. And we might surf the tube. We might not just go to any Pacific uh, movie, or we just might surf it. We might go to the news uh, channel and look at the news. And while we looking at the news, we're giving some critical analysis of what we're looking at. Freedom of speech and freedom of listening. Now we know that most of the news is rigged. We know that a whole lot of history is altered. But there are some channels that try to tell the truth as best as they know how. And sometimes they let it go through. But timing is everything, see. It depends on what's happening on the planet. Whether or not they want you to know and connect the dots, and know the real deal. Because on YouTube, if you look at the right channels, it will allow you to connect the dots, and you can get pure truth. Now, this is where revelations come in at. Revelations, I said from the outset, means something that's revealed or disclosed to make known something hidden. It means to reveal something that's a secret made known. Now, in Revelations, in the Bible, King James Version, it tells you that there will be one that will open the seals of the books that's been these or the meanings of the Bible that's been hidden in coded form. They will have the correct understanding and the correct wisdom to open those seals. That's what a seal means. In the Bible, it said they were sealed up. The secrets were sealed up, or the hidden meaning was sealed up. And I heard Brother Eric Muhammad debating with Polite, and Polite said, "Where do you get your sources from?" And so he said, I'm talking about Eric, Minister Eric said that I believe in revelations. And you can't argue with that. Because evidently he knows the source where it came from, but Polite didn't know. He don't know where, when he do his research in YouTube, y'all don't know who the author is. Is he a friend or enemy? Y'all not, but y'all be arguing, you know. Y'all be arguing saying, some of y'all call yourself a Hebrew Israelite. And some of y'all call yourself Christians. And some of y'all call yourself Muslims, but not knowing the origin of those words. When were those words revealed? So Hebrew comes from the word Hebrew comes from Aramaic. It's a, you know what I mean? The Hebrew comes from Aramaic. Aramaic was the first. Hebrew comes second, and Arabic is the same thing as Aramaic. Arabic is a more modern saying of what Aramaic is, but all of my languages are kin to each other. Now, Abraham, his first name was Abram. Then God gave him the name Abraham. Father of many nations, right? Then he crossed. Then he crossed over. I think it was a river, and that word Hebrew means crossover. You see? Now Israel is Jacob's name. He was given that name when wrestling with one of God's agents, and all this has another deeper meaning. I'm just giving you a surface understanding and a surface meaning. He was wrestling Jacob, also known as Yakub, was wrestling with one of God's angels, and threw his hip out of joint, I believe it was. Anyway, he had him in some kind of lock. The angel tapped out and said, "Let me go." And Yakub or Jacob said, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." So the angel blessed him, but in that process, he renamed him Israel because he was an adversary to one of God's people or God's angel. I'm using the word God because that's the word for the Most High. But the Muslims use Allah. God means possessor of power and force. So says the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now he was an adversary you know, of God. So that means that he was against God. He was an opponent of God. Like in a boxing match, you got the opponent and you got the champion. Sometimes the champion wins. Y'all hear that? That's the thunder. It's snowing and thundering. It's snowing, thundering, and lightning. It's deep, man. So a lot of times, the champion, he can't get no fights. So he carry his opponent, and sometimes he let the opponent win barely win, so they could get a rematch. Yeah, fighting ain't all the time on the up and up, man. Boxing ain't all the time on the up and up. Sometimes they be throwing fights, you know. Boxing got like wrestling, you know, and so Allah let Yaqub do his thing, or let Jacob do his thing, because it was all prophesied that Jacob was supposed to make a double out of the black man. And God wouldn't let him make the double where he was at. So he told him that, you can make your double, but go somewhere else. But he didn't want, he was trying to school Jacob, try to tell him, say, look, when you make, it's already the original here. So what do you need a double for? I mean, what do you need to make a man for? If you make a man, we already got good, and you're gonna download evil while you're trying to make your man. And he's gonna cause bloodshed. Now y'all say that sound crazy, right? Let's fast forward it to what's happening over in Palestine today. Let's fast forward it. Ain't nothing but blood over there, man. It's gonna pick up. Warring over there. So we in Revelations, and we in the war of Armageddon, and we in the day of judgment. Right now in Revelations, it's being played out in real life before your time. I mean, before your very eyes. Y'all trying to deny it. Y'all trying to ignore it. Y'all don't want to see it. And the white man, he don't want to recognize He don't want to recognize the fact that this is the cause of what's happening now. I'm pointing to them branding and misusing and abusing these black people that originally came over here in 1555. Now that's another thing that was hidden from you. That was a revelation or a seal that was hidden from you. They don't want you to know. But they codified it in the Bible, King James and the boys. Couldn't nobody break that seal and figure it out. That's why Allah in the person of Master Farad had to come over here and reveal all of this to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad started breaking the seals, referred to as the Lamb in Revelations. What's the difference between a lamb and sheep? Well, sheep people, sheep, they are gentle, but we're not talking about that when you talk about sheep. We're talking about those who are naive. And follow anyone that claims to be a shepherd. But the lamb is more dignified and more mature, more sophisticated, because he's the lamb of Allah, or the Lamb of God. That means his personality or his character is gentle and righteous. Slow to anger, patient. He's very meek. That's what meek mean, patient. And he recognized righteousness when he see it. But the sheep, only thing they want to do is graze in the grass. So there's a story about the sheep. My uncle told this to me about the sheep grazing in the high territory, grazing in the grass, right? And the lion, every so often, he'll go up there to where the sheep be grazing at, and they sacrifice a sheep to the lion. But it was one wise lamb or sheep that was the head of the herd. And he said, we're going to stop the lion from eating us. So when the lion came to get him a sheep to eat on, the wise lamb started talking to the lion. He said, before you start eating on us, you see we eating this grass right here. Now this grass is more better for you. So to make a long story short, he convinced the lion to start eating grass. And then the lion started eating grass, and eventually his claws, he didn't need the claws no more to tear meat to meat, to tear into the meat. He didn't need his fangs no more. He started eating grass, and all his fangs fell out over a period of time. And he became gentle like the lamb. Now I done seen cats eat grass before. I seen that. So you can't say cats don't eat grass. I seen it. I seen dogs eat grass too. And they use it as medicine. But once you give a dog the taste of blood, he becomes that more vicious. And if you let him kill a live animal, like if you go and catch a cat and let the dog kill it and he tastes that warm blood, he becomes addicted to that. So at the end of the story, the big cat, the big lion was grazing in the grass with the sheep. They were lying together. Now that's a metaphor. The sheep and the lamb are the black people. In the Bible, it says he had hair like lamb's wool and feet like burnt brass as though it had been in the oven. We are a meek and mild-mannered people, slow to anger. And we are sheep because we need a shepherd. To herd us in the right direction. That's where you get the word sheep people. And sheep people are always following the crowd. They're always following the group. But the lamb don't follow the crowd. He followed the righteous shepherd. But he know the shepherd is righteous because he know the sound of the voice of a righteous shepherd. And you see, they bombed or was bombing around Palestine in Bethlehem, where they say Jesus' birthplace. And they didn't have Christmas. You know why they didn't have Christmas? The real reason? Because they know that the seal have been broken and the true meaning of Jesus and the truth about Jesus is being revealed. And the truth about Israel, Yaakov's grafted devil, is being revealed right before your very eyes. So they say that the revolution won't be televised. It's being televised. Not only is the revolution being televised, the war of Armageddon is being televised, and the day of judgment is being televised right before your eyes. Because in the day of judgment, everybody's on trial. Everybody's on trial. South Africa got Israel on trial. The Senate or the congressman got Joe Biden on trial. They got Trump on trial. They got rigged trials everywhere. The whole world is a stage and everybody's playing a part. The stage is set. The curtain goes up. The scene is a broken heart. So they're using this to distract you, especially the black man. Because this is the root of America's problem right here. Right here. The mother of civilization being branded by the wicked Caucasians. And they smiling and everything. And they sitting back so patiently, you know. Let me show you what I'm talking about. They patient. You know. This dude got his hand in his pocket. They not fussing or fighting. They waiting to be branded. With their hands tied behind their back. Holding a baby. For 400 years, they were stripped of their names, language, their God, their culture. And when they talk about their problems today, we're getting ready to go to a video I'm going to show. I'm going to let it play to the end. And it might have commercials or whatever, but I'm gonna let all of it play. They always talking about, well, uh, they go back talking about different presidents, but they don't never go back to George Washington having slaves. Now, what's the difference between this slave and the other people that they had slaves all over, all over? They wasn't. Uh, the other slaves kept their names, their culture, their language, and their God. The Jews kept their language, their culture, and their God. And if you was a slave, a black slave in other parts of the world, you probably kept your language, your culture, and your God. But here in America, they tortured us, brainwashed us, and reprogrammed us. We don't know our real names. We don't know our language. We only could speak the white man's language. We only could have the white man's names. And he put Jesus as being white. And we think God is Jesus and Jesus is white. And we submit to the white man. And we like the sheep, we follow what the next sheep do. So you got a whole flock of sheep following in them churches. Now look, when he showed you how to read the Bible, he didn't teach you how to speak Old English. You just saying words, but you don't know what they mean, what they really mean. You just saying it. He had to re-educate you into how he wants you to think. That's why Allah came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad to show you, to break the seals, and to show you what the Bible is really talking about. And to show you how they tried to flip the script in the Bible. They're trying to say that they were slaves and they had a hell of a Holocaust that was worse than just about anybody's, or equal to the black man's Holocaust. Man, we had a Holocaust for 400 years or better. They still lynching, man. It wasn't so much about the slave part. It was so much about how they treated us. If a man won't treat you right, he ain't gonna teach you right. How they killed babies, just like the Israel is killing babies now. But then you know what they think? They say, can't nobody check us. I mean, we got the big weapons. Can't nobody check us, man. We'll kill them right in front of your eyes. We'll lie to you. But what you gonna do? You gonna go to the polls, knowing that the polls is rigged. The popular vote don't, bring in the president. Electoral, the one that bring in, and the whole Congress is gangsters. The whole White House, the whole District of Columbia ain't nothing but gangsters, man. The whole planet is being ran by sons of Al Capone. And the black man is on the bottom rail being used. They feed off of us, man. You know, they kill us, use body parts. They done got so greedy that they killing their own people, the ones that, you know, that don't mean nothing, irrelevant. And so it's about ready to get rough, because in the Bible, it says it like this: Allah gonna come himself. He the only one that can deal with, you know, not no prophets, but the messenger is here to prepare the way so you could understand what's going on, so you can save yourself. God help those who help themselves. But first, God got to sort out who's worth saving. It's like that sperm swimming to the womb, swimming to the uterus or the egg of the woman. It started out, it was 1 million sperm swimming at the same time, but only one made it through. The rest of them, they didn't make it. You know, who wanted to live to be born bad enough? And in the Bible, it tells you to be born again. You know, it tells you to be born again. There are those who are going to try to, among us, that are going to try to hold you back. Now, the righteous, after Allah sorts out the righteous, and the Bible said it'd be 144,000 to build a new world. And Allah say, I make all things new. But the meek shall inherit the earth. They're the only ones that qualified. If you can make it through all this mayhem and chaos that's going on, you will be and still remain righteous. We're going to be tested. It's the day of judgment. If you can make it through all of this after being like this for all this time, bound, your mind, they cut your hands loose, but your mind is like you submitting to the wrong people. You submitting to Satan. You just like this sitting back, watching all this happen, all the torture happen, and you submit. And like blind deaf, dumb, and blind people, you go to the polls. Now, what they want to see is the percentage of you who are still deaf, dumb, and blind. Seeing how many they can still rule and fool because they don't want to school you right. When you see a sucker bump his head, that's what they're looking for, a sucker. Sucker so they can bump your head. And that's how they stay in power. And those who seem like they are on your side, you got to be leery of them because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that they are snakes of the grafted kind. Now you got some snakes that'll warn you, like a rattlesnake, before he strike. He more merciful because he's warning you. But if you get close to him, he gonna bite you. And y'all know the story. I heard Trump trying to use this analogy, the story of the woman and the snake, and the woman seeing a snake hurt by the river. She fell in love with his beautiful skin, and a snake sheds the skin. And she took the snake home and nursed the snake. When the snake got well, he bit her. And she said, damn, after I nursed you and brought you back to health, you bite me? He said, you knew I was a snake when you took me in. I can't help it. That's my nature. That's the white man. Then you got snakes that won't say nothing. You got some snakes that you be walking up under a tree. They could be on a tree limb and fall on you and bite you. They don't warn you or nothing. Them the worst kind that sneak up on you. That's what you got in the Democrats and the Republicans. Those rednecks, the Klan and whatever, they tell you, they say, look, I don't like you, nigga. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do to you if I get a chance. Even if I don't get a chance, I'm gonna be, But then you got those northern, eastern snakes that smile at you, get friends with you. You can marry their daughter. You could drink with me. Those are the ones that's in the music and in the entertainment field. They see money in you. They know that the black man is talented and the black woman is talented. So they see money in you. But once they start enriching you with money, set you up, they use you as an example to inspire the younger ones to be like you. you know. And but they misuse you and abuse you, but you so deaf, dumb, and blind that you don't know you getting screwed. And so you see a whole lot of brothers, man. Just like, I'm gonna use a good example. Now you got brothers like this too, because they seen how the white man do it. You know, you got other black people like they seen how the white man do it, and they follow suit. They say we gonna do it like that. There ain't nothing but a white man in black skin, and they do it like that. But I'll tell you a good example. I'll tell you a couple of good examples. You got Mike Tyson. Yeah, Gus, the model, got Mike and raised him. The only thing Gus wanted to do was get paid. But he couldn't hold on. You know, Mike was unfortunate. You know, he didn't nobody, no black man take Mike up on his wing. Muhammad Ali could have did it. You know, like Malcolm took Muhammad Ali up under his wing. Like Elijah Muhammad took Malcolm up under his wing. But this one you see when you start seeing the really workings, what's in the mind of those who you think is great. Mike was just unfortunate. You know, if he would have had the right mentor, once Mike was making top dollar, they would have took Mike out of that environment. If Muhammad Ali would have schooled Mike and turned him on to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Mike would have been a minister. He's articulate and very, very wise, smart. But Gus, the model, he just wanted to, make some money, but he couldn't hold on. But he left him in the hands of other white guys. And Don King, he his motto is, well, they were millionaires, I made them millionaires. But Don King wasn't cool either. So this is why we're in a day of separation. This is why we're in a day of judgment. The seventh day, the day of judgment. To weed out the goats from the sheep or the lambs. A goat will eat anything or do anything, and is uncontrollable. And he's a very aggressive, the lamb is not, the sheep are not. So Allah's going to put the lamb on his right hand and the sheep, the lamb on his right hand and the goat on the left hand. That's what we're going through now. He's testing us, to see if you get hungry, what you gonna do. If you didn't listen to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what you gonna do? So over in Gaza, I'm 77 years old. The Jews moved in on them around 40. I know they was plotting on it in 46 after the war, but they say everything jumped off in 1947. Man, that's a long time ago, man. And not only that, I'm going to compare them with the Nation of Islam. Uh-oh. See, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say, I'm not raising up followers, I'm raising up leaders. So you can't think like the crowd if you're going to be a leader. You got to be creative in your thinking. For 45 years or more, ever since Wallace took over and did his thing, all the believers did was make money off of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's name, more so than Master Farad. You see, they don't talk about Master Farad. They stopped talking about Master Farad because they couldn't see him. A lot of them didn't know Master Farad. A lot of Muslims knew. I know there's a brother here named after Master Farad, named after Farad Muhammad. I don't know if he ain't living now though, probably. But those early Muslims seen Master Farad Muhammad. But by the time in 74 or 75, they was old. They was, in their 70s and 80s. The young ones, scheming and dreaming and fiending on the big fortune that was accumulated. So we weren't ready to run no nation. We weren't ready to sustain and build on a nation. It wasn't the right people in there. Some of them still running around thinking that they financially secure. Some of them think they doing something big because every now and then they praise the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But they ain't showing the way for the young ones. I'm telling you like it is, y'all. They ain't showing the way they ain't building. They didn't rebuild. Once they found out that Wallace was a traitor and Muhammad Ali was a traitor, Malcolm was a traitor. Now my uncle told me this. I don't know how true it was because I wasn't in it back then. I was born in it, but my mother took me out of it at the age of 7. I used to hate when I got a little older, I used to hate that she did that. But now I'm beginning to understand why, I got took out, because I would have been following the crowd. Maybe, I don't know. I would have been following the crowd like the rest of them, like my uncle did. My uncle, he didn't exactly follow the crowd, and but he couldn't get no one on his to believe what he was saying. My uncle revealed this to me. He said that they actually killed Elijah. Now, brother said that when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad got bronchitis or asthma, that bronchial condition, that he had just got through teaching and was very hot and sweat, and he opened the window in the wintertime to cool himself off. That don't sound like wise as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was. That don't sound like he would do something like that. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said that, I heard him say this giving a lecture. He said that he got, a very serious condition, asthma, whatever, but he have to suffer what we suffer. Now, John Elijah Muhammad was trying to build a black hospital. In that Savior's Day 74 Savior's Day video, they had a black hospital on the board. Now, he gonna die in the enemy's hospital? Now, how do we know that they didn't off him? They didn't off him in the hospital. Wasn't no black doctors that was in the nation. They could have gave him home treatment. All what he needed, they had enough money to treat him at the house. Whatever equipment that they needed, they could have had it flown in. And then Minister Farrakhan talking about he escaped a plot. He's not really dead. So the Muslims know, the insiders know, but they don't talk about it. I'm going to tell you why they don't talk about it. Now, when Malcolm got killed, the white man want to put Malcolm on the stamp. They martyred Malcolm. Now, Khalid, it was very suspicious how he died, but they didn't martyr Khalid. Very few martyred Khalid. But the white man didn't martyr Khalid. Now when Elijah Muhammad was alive, the white man sent John Elijah Muhammad. I mean, they gave a welcome in Washington and rolled out the royal carpet. The white man rolled out the royal carpet for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They tried to get him that way, blow his head up, like they did Malcolm. That didn't work. But they wasn't going to martyr the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because he was too righteous. And they didn't want to give him that influence, being a martyr. But they gave his son, they're giving his son Warif Deen Muhammad, they're giving him more accolades than they are Farrakhan, because Wallace or Warif Deen Muhammad was the inside man for the white man, for the devil. They martyred Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King and John Elijah Muhammad sat down, had a parlay, and Dr. Martin Luther King seen it John Elijah Muhammad's way. And then he started speaking like John Elijah Muhammad. Then they knocked him off. They say Jesse Jackson was the inside man. You know? So when you do business with that white man and he make you rich, the white man didn't make John Elijah Muhammad rich. That was Allah's doing. So when that white man make you rich, he's doing it so he can fish in or reel in other suckers, so he could keep, his hustle going. Just like boxing. Some of them get rich. Everybody want to fight now. Everybody want to be a boxer. So he don't mind two black people, Puerto Ricans, beating their head up and face up, and and they ain't gonna do nothing with the money. Some of them do. They help their people out. But the one they make superstars out of, they don't do nothing. Like Oprah. Like Jordan. Like, and then when you try to do it like Suge try to out-gangster them. You can't out-gangster them gangsters, man. They're the original gangsters. That's how they got America, being gangster. That's how they getting the whole planet. They so gangster now that can't nobody go up against them but God, but Allah. And they speeding the process up by using AI, but it's not going to work because Their time is up, man. But they're going to get as many of our people, especially those that refuse to wake up, as necessary. If they can get you. So we're going to go right here.
A campaign of lies can hide anything. And with the magic of disinformation, mysterious deaths can be quickly brushed off as suicides, even when all of the details don't add up. And there's so many stories now that just don't add up. Public assassinations can happen right in front of you, and you'll never know who was really behind it or why, as long as the powers that be push a great narrative, the same lie over and over and over again. Jeffrey Epstein infiltrated the highest ranks of every sector of power. You are going to learn a lot about the world today. He was into law enforcement, art, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, big business, real estate, philanthropy, media, academics, and banking. He even wormed his way into high fashion. He hung out with Nobel Prize-winning scientists and billionaire arms dealers, movie directors, famous actors, journalists, and lots of politicians, including heads of state, not just here in America. And he has a very special bond with Bill and Hillary Clinton. We still don't know who took part in his many crimes, and they are vast. This is nothing short of political terrorism, theater facilitated by the media. Today's guest, as you will hear, I just finished it, and you will hear halfway through, I say, maybe it's halfway through, I said, I think this is the most important hour I have ever been a part of in broadcast. I've done this for 45 years. This is the most important person and hour you can spend. Today's guest has a gift for locating power and hunting it in its darkest corners. She realized that Epstein was not an anomaly. She is somebody who's written 2 volumes on just him, but you will see it is connected to entire networks of power and influence, a web of elites who operate under the principle that rules are for other people. Her 2-volume book, One Nation Under Blackmail, the sordid union between intelligence and crime that gave rise to Jeffrey Epstein, is out. Keep your eye on this one. She is sharp. She is a massive threat to powerful people. If people will listen and do their own homework and just explore what she's saying, the game is up. She's the kind of writer who reminds the elites that they're not actually above rules and we're not all a bunch of rubes. Please welcome Whitney Webb.
Judicial Watch is a more independent, reliable reporter of details of the deep state, the way our government really operates in Washington, D.C., than the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC, you name it. They are liberal advocacy groups that sometimes do journalism, mostly report gossip, and are vehicles for government officials to undermine our republic through criminal activity. I tell you, I thank God for Judicial Watch. We do real journalism. We're the only ones in town doing this key work to uncover what's really going on.
Murder something big. Murder big.
Well, if you told me you would
drowning. I would not let the hand.
Jackie, can we talk to you for a second? You know why you're here?
I've seen your face before my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. No idea. And I can feel it crawling in the air tonight.
I can't wait to get into this podcast with you. Imagine what it would be like if you could just flip a switch and make every odor that gets into your home just go away in a few seconds. If it sounds too good to be true, believe it or not, this one is not. The new Eden Pure Thunderstorm Air Purifier. The Thunderstorm isn't just your garden variety air purifier. It uses powerful O3 molecules that actually hunt odors down and destroy them. It also kills viruses, mold, and so much more. And they get to all of the places that you can't reach, behind and under furniture, for instance. So you're getting a clean, fresh smelling air all the time. I have a very big dog, and at this time of year, that very big dog is wet a lot. I hate that. We have Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3s in our home. They have them in a 3-pack right now for your whole home protection. You get 3 units for under $200. It's an amazing deal. It means that you can not only keep your house smelling fresh all year long, but you can put one in the truck. You can put one in your refrigerator. They make one for refrigerators. The fresh air you're breathing is good, fresh air. Find out, EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. Put the discount code GLEN3 in to save. Welcome. I am a huge fan of your work. You have covered some of the most important stories, I think, in my lifetime.
Wow, thank you.
And you are so clear on all of them. And most of these stories are the ones you can't get answers on. They're all the stories that the big and powerful want to hide, want you to not see what's really going on. And it's so frustrating because it's clear that these things are happening and should be discussed. Are you worried ever about your safety?
No. And the reason I say that is because I think, a lot of what we're facing is an energetic and spiritual battle, I guess you could say. And I think in order, if you're afraid of these people, you're giving them power over you. And I think really the only way to win this is to have your commitment to, what you're fighting for, the good about humanity, to be total. Right. So
wow, good for you. How old are you?
33.
You write and think and speak like you're 80 and very wise.
Thank you.
You must have good parents. Okay, so I want to talk to you, if we can, in an hour. I want to mention Bitcoin, get a little bit of that. Journalism, transhumanism, ESG, the World Economic Forum. We're not going to be able to get to all of it, but we have to start with Jeffrey Epstein, because the way you have written about him, it connects to a whole world of corruption.
Yeah.
Is he kind of the Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a meta scandal. You're looking at someone who really had, I guess, for lack of a better metaphor, had his hands in a lot of pies, right?
Yeah, right.
So he was sort of at the center of a lot of scandals, but not necessarily at the top, right? I think he was more maybe middle management in a sense, but very central to a lot of these things going on, that sort of these networks in which he inhabits are involved in, numerous acts of corruption simultaneously. And he, is there involved in many of them, but not necessarily at the top level, right?
So was he a spy
I think he definitely had intelligence connections, and there's a lot, to suggest that was the case. I think one of the earliest hints we heard of that was having a Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, under Trump, say that one of the reasons he was pressured into giving Epstein a sweetheart deal during his first arrest in Florida was because he had been told by unspecified actors that Epstein belonged to intelligence. But that's kind of, what exactly does that mean? Was he an asset? Was he on the payroll? Which intelligence agency? Multiple intelligence agencies? Right. When you have his close association with someone like Ghislaine Maxwell in the mix, and her father had affiliations with numerous intelligence agencies, it really is an open question.
He was kind of a bad guy. I'm reading your work about him, and explain who he was.
So Robert Maxwell was involved in many things, but he definitely played a major role in undermining U.S. national security by selling bug software to nuclear laboratories in the United States. And this was directly facilitated by well-known statesmen in U.S. history, like Henry Kissinger, for example. And a lot of the people, I think, that enabled him, at least on the U.S. side, tend to be those that favor global governance and, they kind of don't want the U.S. to have that kind of monopoly on power.
Because all of his family, they were killed in the Holocaust, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so he's in the West, England. He survives, becomes kind of William Randolph Hearst of England.
Yeah, media mogul, sure.
Yeah. And then betrays the West. And that's not because he was on the other, he wasn't on the Soviet side. He was on a global government side?
Well, I think you have to look at this network, and they've evolved over time, right? Robert Maxwell was very close to the Eastern Bloc. He had a very close relationship with intelligence figures in the KGB and also Bulgaria. He had a relationship with British intelligence and Israeli intelligence, and was involved in aspects of what later became known as Iran-Contra, which of course involves aspects of U.S. intelligence. So, I mean, he had his hands in, everywhere and everything. And I think ultimately people like him are interested in any deal they can make to advance their money and their power and their influence, they'll take it. So Robert Maxwell was very interested in having his family be like the Kennedy family, a political power dynasty. And that's part of why he started moving into New York City around, just a year or two before he ended up dying. And Ghislaine Maxwell was sent to New York sort of to be his emissary. Into the U.S. And he wanted her actually to marry a Kennedy, and this is attested to in past mainstream media reports. And you can see his efforts to get her close to, I think, one of the sons of Robert F. Kennedy, and also John F. Kennedy Jr., trying to get her sort of in that social tier, because he sort of saw that as, would advance his power and also, that of his children. And I think if you look at a lot of the psychology of Robert Maxwell, he seems to have had narcissistic elements, and that could be because of the trauma of his past. And a lot of times narcissistic parents see their children as extensions of themselves. Yeah. And so, he's looking at how to build an empire and using his children to that effect. And you sort of see that with the psychology of Ghislaine Maxwell as well.
So Ghislaine, was she part and parcel of from the beginning, or was she, kind of a good girl, idealistic, comes over here, knows that dad wants to put her into powerful positions, but not shopping women?
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. You have to look at her early history. The favorite son of Robert Maxwell was originally Michael Maxwell. He was in a vegetative state after a car crash, I think when he was 15. And that happened shortly after, just a few days after Ghislaine was born. So her family members and she herself have attested to that she was basically neglected for the first 3 years of her life, and even developed childhood anorexia. Things like that. And then, not a few years after, she becomes the favorite child. So she goes from having this complete lack of parental attention to being sort of showered in it by Robert Maxwell. And that obviously is going to have a psychological impact on someone. And in addition, she was basically managed by her father from a very early age. He tried to manage her romantic life. He tried to manage what job she would have, and she was very dependent on him. So when he is dead in 1991, it makes sense that she would attach herself to someone with a lot of the similar characteristics, right?
So dad didn't know about Jeffrey Epstein wasn't alive at that point?
Well, the allegation have been made by people that worked with Robert Maxwell in the 80s that Jeffrey Epstein was seen in his offices frequently in the United Kingdom. And during that period of time, it was known that Epstein was active in the United Kingdom. He was allegedly being mentored by a British arms dealer named Douglas Leese with British intelligence connections.
First of all, you wrote 2 volumes on this.
1,000 pages.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy amounts of work.
Yeah, I had my son was born in the middle of it, so it was really crazy.
You were there for that, I imagine, when your son was born. So tell me, 1,000 pages, and it's not, there's no fluff in it. I mean, it is.
It's dense.
It's very dense.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it nobody else is reporting on this?
Well, I guess I don't really know exactly why that would be, but the silence is very eerie about major aspects of the Epstein case. It ended up being 1,000 pages because as I was writing about Epstein, a lot of the connections that came up, I was just, increasingly aware that a lot of people in the American public, a lot of the names I was coming across, most people weren't going to be familiar with.
Correct.
Banks like the Bank of Credit and Commerce International or BCCI, the scandal that involved, or even things like Iran-Contra, people may have heard the name but don't really know what it involved. Mm-hmm. So I figured I was going to have to go back and sort of explain that to people. So that type of context is volume 1 of the book, and also the history of sexual blackmail and how it's been sort of an undercurrent in some past political scandals in American history, and how in these sorts of networks in which Epstein was inhabiting, that type of practice and exploitation even of minors for those purposes was actually disturbingly common. So Epstein starts to look less and less of he's not an anomaly, basically.
Right.
By the time you get through with volume 1. And so volume 2 is sort of my effort to, dig up as much as I could, with stuff that's publicly available, really, about Epstein, and also his greatest benefactor, Leslie Wexner, and then also, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Okay, so this is just...
There's a lot to discuss.
There's a lot to discuss here on just this, because this goes to the deep state, or you call it deep politics. And it's been going on for a long time, but people, I don't think, realize that, the Bourne Identity, those Jason Bourne movies, that is a reflection of some people's real lives. I mean, it's a totally fictitious story, but those things do go on. And I tell you, I have felt for a long time with the NSA, listening to everybody's phone calls. If you're important in Washington, they're going to do everything they can
to manage you. Yeah.
And so if you're not rock solid in who you are and what right and wrong really is, they got you.
Yeah. But even they don't, today, I think we've moved away from the type of model that Epstein used for sexual blackmail. It's an era of electronic blackmail, and you don't even have to do anything wrong. They can just plant it on your devices and play gotcha that way. So it's really an unprecedented situation. And a lot of these intelligence agencies, as I note in the book, really for decades have been totally out of control. And I really start off the book talking about how intelligence agencies and organized crime in the U.S. got in bed together, and really that symbiosis. It was originally justified out of wartime necessity during World War II.
Fighting the Nazis.
But it never stopped, right?
Right.
And it's, business is business. And some of these people in our own national security state, realized they could make a lot of money working with organized crime and really shielding them and getting in on the spoils, I guess you could say.
Good news and bad news. Here is the bad news first, then we get right back into the podcast. It looks like beef prices are probably going to increase by another 20% early next year. Isn't that great? Nothing like a large increase in meat prices, the largest in U.S. history, to cheer you up. Well, here is the good news. Good Ranchers is letting you lock in your price on all the meat you buy this November when you subscribe during their Black Friday savings. This is a chance to inflation-proof your meat budget. And you're going to get $70 worth of free USDA choice steaks and save an additional $25 on every box when you subscribe. So forget the high prices and the low quality of the grocery store. Treat yourself and someone you love to Good Ranchers, their award-winning service and quality. It's great for the holiday season. Remember, visit goodranchers.com/Glenn or use the promo code Glenn at checkout to grab their best offer of the year. Black Angus is one of the premier breeds of cattle for high-quality beef. So don't have a normal Black Friday. Have a Black Angus Friday with great steaks from Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. You know, we think of, in my idealistic years of thinking about America, I thought, well, we did some bad things, yes, and I'm not talking about slavery or anything else. I'm talking about things we did in war, but we had, you know, we really didn't want to do those things. I'm not sure if any of that is true. Are the people involved in this stuff, do they recognize at all that this is evil, or is this just business?
Well, I think when you're talking about an intelligence agency,
I'm going to stop it right there. Now, you notice he said we did some bad things, but I'm not talking about slavery is one of them. That's the main thing. Slavery is the main baddest thing. Anytime you take a people, kill them up, it was in the millions. They killed us up in the millions. For the over 400 years, tortured us, dummied us down. We couldn't read a book. We got caught reading, they kill us. We couldn't even play our music at one point in time. One point in time, we couldn't play music because the drums, with the talking drums, we could send signals. Once they found out that we could talk through the drums and other instruments, we weren't allowed to play them for a long time. We was like that for at least 300 years. So we wasn't allowed no kind of education. And public school was for, especially for the black man and the Indians. When they did send us to school, because before that, they had church school, you know, they were teaching them at church and teaching them in the home. They had private schools. But he said, I'm not talking about slavery. I'm laughing, y'all. I'm laughing to keep from crying, man. But sometimes they say the most ridiculous things and do even more ridiculous things. Now y'all say, why are you playing them white people? I'm using this as an example because now she's not talking to us. She's talking to her fellow white people. Plus she's selling a book. You know? That's why he's saying I'm not talking about slavery. And a lot of black people only listen to what white people say. Especially she young too, female, 33 years old. You know? That's why how Master Farad got over here on us. His father was a jet black man. Talking about Master Farad's father was a jet black man. Married a Caucasian woman and made her righteous and a believer in Islam. Now y'all say a believer. What's the difference between believing in Islam and the nature? You are the nature of Islam. Well, Islam is in your nature to do the will of God. It's in your nature. That's why you slow to anger. But the Caucasian, it was bred out of him. They might got a small portion of righteousness. So this war and everything is telling you you can't legislate morality. So ain't no sense you going to the polls thinking that's going to end the war, thinking that's going to pick up the economy. Let's go back.
There's hierarchies, so there's like people maybe low in different levels that may think what they're doing is right and advancing American interests, but then there's people at the top that aren't necessarily like that, and it's about advancing their own interests. If you look at a lot of controversial intelligence operations and decisions, coups, for example, of the past, a lot of it was justified as going against communist influence, trying to keep that from growing. But then some of these same actors, like the Iran-Contra types, they ended up getting involved with the Chinese government just a few years later in the 1990s. And some of this blossomed into what a lot of conservatives today remember as Chinagate during the Clinton administration and things like that. So, you know, they really have no allegiance to anything except their desire to grow their own money and power.
Are we ever going to find out who's in the black book?
I don't think so. I think the FBI has been compromised from the very beginning. In the book, I talk a lot about J. Edgar Hoover. He was blackmailed by the mob. He realized the power blackmail had, started using blackmail himself. And, you know, increasingly the FBI, and I think it's very obvious to a lot of conservatives now, comes in to cover things up and to, you know, go after, figures that they, you know, don't want to advance in their careers or, you know, any sort of thing. It's very complicated. So what do we do as a country when, you know, there needs to be massive investigations of all sorts of stuff, Jeffrey Epstein being one, and, you know, the government is increasingly incapable of investigating itself, especially when you're looking at the FBI or something.
Can we go through some names like Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump? What were they involved in? So each of those cases is really different. But if I'm looking at, you know, I guess the one that's gotten the most attention, obviously, are the former presidents, right? Trump and Clinton. As far as I'm concerned, the Clinton-Epstein relationship is much more damaging than the Trump-Epstein relationship. But there, you know, are obvious reasons for concern in both of them. And I don't think it's, in trying to be objective, you know, I can't absolve one or the other. But are you saying... Are you saying because one is more damaging? Because people don't understand. It's not just the horrific, evil sex trafficking that was going on. It's also massive corruption
and financial crimes. And that's particularly glaring with the Epstein-Clinton relationship. You have someone like Jeffrey Epstein that described himself in the 80s as a financial bounty hunter. He was hiding or finding looted money for powerful people. That's coming from him. And he said this to numerous people. There's numerous sources attesting to this. So obviously he was very comfortable with the offshore financial system, shadow banking, and all of that. And then in the late 80s, in addition to becoming involved with Leslie Wexner's finances, he is involved in orchestrating one of the largest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history. The other person he worked with in that, Stephen Hoffenberg, is arrested and goes to jail for that in 1993. Epstein's name is dropped from the case, and he ends up at Clinton White House fundraisers. And one of those fundraisers is involved Hillary Clinton's alleged effort to refurbish the White House. And this makes a brief appearance in Vince Foster's quote unquote suicide note. The only mention of Hillary Clinton in that suicide note is relating to her and Khaki Hawker-Smith redecorating and how there was nothing wrong with the finances there. If you're... listeners are familiar with the Vince Foster situation and how Hillary Clinton, her office was involved in finding the suicide note when there was nothing in the briefcase and all of that later. It's very interesting. The only mention of her name would be in trying to absolve that particular fundraiser of, any wrongdoing, which would have been Foster's responsibility. And that's Jeffrey Epstein's, one of his first interactions with the White House. There's a picture of him shaking hands with Bill Clinton at that fundraiser donor reception. And only UK media covered that when it came out last December.
I got to tell you,
it's pretty stunning.
I only see stuff that I kind of trust from UK now. If there's any scandal going on in America, I trust the foreign press more than I trust our press.
Well, isn't it stunning that there's a picture of, the claim has been for a long time that the Epstein-Clinton relationship only really began after Clinton left office. Yeah. And then you have a picture contradicting that, and it doesn't get any coverage.
So
there's something else there, obviously.
I was shocked to learn from you that Ron Brown, I remember he was a guy who was on a plane going someplace.
Croatia.
Yeah, Croatia. And it crashed, and everybody was like, it's another Clinton murder. And I've never really bought into you wouldn't have to push me far.
Now, for you young brothers and sisters, y'all probably don't know about Ron Brown. He was a black politician or a black, he was into the government. And a lot of people say he was for the black man. And then he ended up in an airplane crash.
But I'm a fact guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Show me the facts.
Well, it's a lot to unravel to understand the Ron Brown situation, because it's tied up with what I mentioned earlier, Chinagate, which was very difficult even for Congress to investigate. The man at the center of it, who was also the man that Jeffrey Epstein met with repeatedly at the White House, named Mark Middleton, he pleaded the fifth 28 times, including to the question was he a foreign agent? And pretty much every key figure they tried to subpoena also pleaded the fifth. And there was just... it was very difficult to investigate. And even the George W. Bush administration, the first invocation of executive privilege of Bush as president was, among other things, to block documents about Mark Middleton being made available to Congress. And then 9/11 happens and everyone forgets.
Wow.
It's very amazing, because Mark Middleton was not a high-ranking guy. He was an aide to Mac McLarty, who was chief of staff and then a senior advisor to Bill Clinton. So why are you having the subsequent president stepping in for Mark Middleton? There's obviously a lot going on there, because at the same time that Mark Middleton is involved in Chinagate, he's meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein in that period of time is arranging for the relocation of Southern Air Transport, the Iran-Contra airline, instead of going from Miami to Latin America, it starts going from Columbus, Ohio, where Leslie Wexner is based, to Hong Kong. So are those events connected? I make a case for that in the book. And if true, it's very, very disconcerting, because basically, to summarize Chinagate, you have a mass transfer of sensitive U.S. military technology being made to China. It's being paid for by the PLA, or the Chinese military. And Ron Brown was at the center of that, because the Commerce Department was signing off on, all sorts of...
And so why was he then supposedly killed?
He, shortly before he was unexpectedly asked to go on a trade mission to Croatia, he agreed to cooperate with an investigation into this particular network that was executing Chinagate. And the people on the U.S. side that were facilitating Chinagate were people that were connected to the networks of longtime Clinton benefactors, the Riotti family, and Jackson Stevens, who, were sort of political makers for Bill Clinton when he was governor of Arkansas. It's crazy.
How much of what we think we know is wrong, or how big of a role is what we think we know to what really is happening?
Well, I think there's been a major effort to control the media and how much information gets to the American public about all sorts of things. If you look at the Epstein case, you're only allowed to talk about his sex crimes from 2000 to 2006. Don't look at his financial crimes or any of the thing he did before the year 2000 is, pretty much how mainstream media handles the case. And that's pretty, there's a lot to find if you go back farther.
So when you're looking, let's just look at Epstein for a second. When you're looking at his circle of influence, he is somebody who's kind of recruiting, just getting people on tape doing horrible things or raising money so they're in the pocket, right? Is that kind of his role?
I think that's part of it, but at the same time, he's doing a lot of that. He's also involved in financial crimes pretty much throughout his career. I mean, that's the common thread from Epstein from the 70s until his second arrest. But they would
know that if he was working as an operation, that would kind of be over.
I think it was known. I mean, even in January 2020, you have John McCain's wife, Cindy McCain, saying, we all knew what Epstein was doing.
Right.
And this is the wife of a senator with no direct connection to the Epstein scandal. So that means top people in our Congress and Senate knew what Epstein was up to, and nothing was done.
And so is there a big body count?
Around Epstein?
Yeah.
I think there is to an extent. Mark Middleton, who I just mentioned, was found hung by the neck by an extension cord in May with a shotgun wound to the chest. And it was ruled a suicide in Little Rock, Arkansas. And a local court ruled pretty shortly thereafter that no video or photos of the scene could be publicly released. And this was only after Mark Middleton had been involved in Chinagate and numerous other scandals, but that only happened just a few months after the visitor logs of him meeting with Epstein was released last December, published by the UK's Daily Mail.
So that's one.
That's one recently. You also have Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a major facilitator of his sex trafficking activities, particularly when it came to the modeling industry. Turned up dead in his prison cell. You have Epstein himself, and then you have the son of Esther Salas, who was the judge overseeing the Epstein Deutsche Bank case, murdered at her home.
Let's not just gloss over Epstein and his death. Do you believe he hung himself?
I think the official story is just, it's crazy, personally, because, he was a tall guy. He's supposed to have hung himself from something that's shorter than his standing height with like paper thin sheets. He would have had to curl up in the fetal position to hang himself. And he's,
You're not going to do that.
It's very, it's logistically impossible. We're supposed to leave all the cameras malfunction that night. The prison guards were asleep. It's a lot of coincidences.
So who would we have to believe? I mean, that would have to involve lots of government. Government.
But he belonged to intelligence. And if you look at, someone like Robert Maxwell, he died off of his yacht. He had a lot of ties to intelligence. Things were, the walls were closing in on him, and his own daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, thinks he was murdered by rogue Mossad agents and Sicilian contract hitmen. And that's coming straight from his daughter that worked closely with him. So if if things get too hot, if you, maybe did work for them in the past, but you become, more of a liability than an asset, things sometimes happen.
Every morning, people all over the country wake up and live their lives. It's a land that today is still free. They work hard. They try to make a good living. They love their God, their family. And at the end of the night, they go to bed as decent people. That is the American ideal. It's an almost limitless aim, conceived in the hearts, motivated by liberty and goodness and freedom and decency. Please believe me when I say you're not alone. And you're not apt to find a clearer example of that kind of spirit than the people who build, make, dream of, and sell the products from Grip 6. They make several things, but I want to talk about their socks, for instance. The socks, when you buy them, you're supporting American ranchers who raise specially bred sheep that will produce modern wool, the kind of wool that we need that keeps you cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The American manufacturers who wash that wool, process it, and then weave it into socks that will keep your feet warm in the winter. All of it is happening right here. This is a group of American business owners who have accepted the risk that comes along with only using American-made products and American labor. So help us rebuild the dream. Keep our community strong. Grip 6, check them out, grip6.com. grip6.com/Beck and save. I don't believe in the Pizzagate. conspiracy, that there's an underground. However, I do think that there is real evil at the upper levels that we've been engaging in, and all of us dupes out in the center of the country are like, oh no, how prevalent is the massive corruption and the evil with.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the more you look at the people that were around Epstein, even before Epstein gets involved, it becomes very clear that what he was doing was not out of the ordinary for these particular groups, especially like arms dealers, like Adnan Khashoggi. He had an alleged harem of women that he used to blackmail powerful people in the private and public sectors on his yacht, and all other sorts of types of people. Robert Keith Gray, a PR executive that started working for Adnan Khashoggi around the same time that Jeffrey Epstein allegedly did, has an alleged history of sexual blackmail for the CIA. And then you have allegations of Roy Cohn, the well-known New York mob attorney, also being involved in sexual blackmail stuff, begins working for Adnan Khashoggi in the same period of time in the 1980s. I mean, the more you look, it's quite, it's prevalent. But, how prevalent it is, I can't really say, but it definitely does influence our politics, and that's disturbing.
Is the Clinton Foundation involved in any of this? It just is...
So I don't know exactly, those types of activities. I have no evidence for that, and I haven't looked into it. So I'm not going to say it's not happening, but I just don't know because I haven't looked.
Right.
But like I mentioned earlier about the Epstein-Clinton relationship, he goes from Ponzi schemes to Clinton fundraising. Then he's involved with a lot of the 1996 controversial fundraisers that were investigated by Congress. Clinton leaves office. He's flying around in Epstein's plane, setting up the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and even credits Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003 with designing a lot of the philanthropy that became the Clinton Foundation, specifically the HIV/AIDS program. Wow. So you have a serial financial criminal creating basically the Clinton political slush fund post-presidency.
Have you seen any connections in Ukraine? This is just the hotbed of a lot of really nefarious players.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it specifically because a lot of my timeline that I did for the book, stops before years like 2014 when there was this, basically a coup. It was Victoria Nuland and some of these people from the Obama administration and all of that. So unfortunately, I haven't personally explored that, but I think it's been, even mainstream media before the recent conflict there was, pretty open about the corruption in Ukraine.
So I don't know your politics, and that's not important to me. What's important to me is your character and your work, which is phenomenal. But I'm guessing you and I don't necessarily agree on policies.
Maybe, I don't know. I just, at this point, I think my politics are, I don't want the government to be run by organized crime.
That's what
I think that's a starting point for most Americans. Let's start there.
Right. That's what I was driving to is there are big things on the table that no one's talking about. And
we're all focused on the little stuff they've used to divide and conquer us this whole time. And big things are happening, and basically we are being herded into a techno-feudalism, slavery. I don't know, there's a lot of different names for it going around, but it's not good.
Right.
And it's organized crime, running the show.
At the highest levels, and also evil. It's just getting so dark. And, I'm to the point where, can you give me 9 of the top 10 Bill of Rights? You know what I mean? Do you agree with those? Give me anything that is foundational. They're all being destroyed. All of them. They don't mean anything anymore. But those are the things that can bring us together. And they do. I'm sure you're called a radical conspiracy theorist. There's a difference between conspiracy theory and conspiracy facts.
Sure.
So I would call you conspiracy fact purveyor.
Yeah, I guess so, because conspiracy is a real crime and it's happening,
Right.
and it's been happening.
Right.
And, a lot of us are sort of fed this, when we're in school and stuff, sort of this naive, I guess you could call it a fairy tale version of history where there's no corruption, everything's fine. The mob disappeared decades ago,
Right.
Nothing to see here, but that's not the real history of this country.
Tell me, before we leave Epstein, tell me why Maxwell's alive.
Oh, I think it's pretty obvious. She's going to cooperate with the people that supported that operation, and she's not going to spill anything. She got moved from the prison where I think she was at the same prison where Epstein died, and now she's at what has been described as a country club prison in Florida. That wouldn't have happened unless she was like, yeah, just leave me alone, please. I'll do whatever you want.
All right, let's.
I think she knows from her father's death who not to double cross and who runs the show. Yeah.
How does this involve the regular person? Why should the regular person care about this kind of corruption?
In just talking about Epstein, the financial crimes there are very significant and are just sort of a microcosm of what has basically been the looting of the American public for decades. You look at people like Catherine Austin Fitts and Mark Skidmore, who have calculated about $21 trillion of U.S. taxpayer money that's just gone missing from the House of Urban Development and the Department of Defense.
Right.
It's probably more than that. Where is it being... Where'd it go?
Yeah.
Who took it?
I remember.
And it's still happening. And now we're having the standard of life in the U.S. being degraded. Inflation's increasing. The squeeze is on thanks to manufactured food and energy crises. And I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing being built for us, people are currently perhaps unwilling to accept. But when they're cold and hungry and desperate,
you're exactly right.
I think that some people will be more willing.
You're not improving my mood much.
Well, it's we have to understand what we're facing in order to solve it, right? And a lot of people
deal with it. I've been ringing this bell for almost 20 years now, and saying, "Wake up, pay attention, look what's happening," and it just keeps getting more and more obvious. And at times, you're just like, how do you deal with it?
Well, I'm a mother, and I just, I have to keep going. I don't know. I have to keep saying something because my kids are going to live in this world.
Right.
And there's certain things that I just find unacceptable. And I think every parent probably does at this.
This is something that it takes a God, the Most High, to deal with this. The white man owes us and he doing everything in the world to keep from being just to us. He hates us with a passion, and that's the only way he's going to possibly get out of it. The few who are sympathetic to the black man's cause, few white people that are sympathetic to the black man's cause, Allah might be merciful to them, and they have to tell their people what the real truth is. This lady came from Israel a couple of weeks ago, said that the problem is going to be the black youth for Israel. All these migrants coming over here, that's so they can have the migrants fight the brothers in the ghetto. That's killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
point. So, it doesn't really matter anymore. And I think also if you're looking at this from like the energetic spiritual level, it matter, we have to keep fighting because what's the alternative and what does that mean for us even after we're gone?
Yeah.
Right.
So let me, I first ran into you and your work. I don't remember where I saw you, but you were talking about transhumanism.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that, again, I think I was talking about this in the 90s and saying
it's been going on a long time.
Long time.
Mm-hmm.
And saying that this is what life is going to head towards, and it's not good. And we should probably have a conversation now. We are on the verge of this. This is happening. It could
faster
happen
than ever. Yeah.
Yeah. It could happen 20, 25, 30, 35. It's here now.
Yeah.
Explain what transhumanism is and why it is so dangerous.
Yeah, so I'll just probably start with the history of it. So there was a man named Julian Huxley. He's the brother of the famous author Aldous Huxley. He was president of the British Eugenics Society. The United Nations is created after World War II. He is put in charge of UNESCO. In writing his vision for UNESCO, Julian Huxley says about eugenics, we need to make the unthinkable thinkable again. 10 years later, he coins the term transhumanism in a book called...
Did he read his brother's work?
I'm sure, actually, that Aldous Huxley's work was influenced by the type of social milieu he inhabited, which would include his brother. And, sort of those intellectual circles where both of them grew up, right? Okay. This is the British aristocracy, and really a lot of the idea of eugenics going back to Francis Galton and, Darwinism and all of that, it seems to sort of emanate from there.
Fabian socialists and all of that.
Yes. So in a book in 1957, I believe, called New Bottles for New Wine, something like that, Julian Huxley coins the terms transhumanism and talks about how the new eugenics is going to be merging man with machine. So this is basically eugenics rebranded, and a lot of people that funded eugenics causes of the past, like the Rockefeller family, are, big proponents of transhumanism today. And it's good.
Now, I'm breaking in on this part because all what they doing is practicing what Yakub did, transhumanism. Yakub was the father of it. See, the Caucasian can't stand the sun. He gets sunburned. And the sun is going to be two suns. One is the Sirius sun, and one is our sun. When they line up, they're calling it global warming. But it happens every so many thousands of years, and the planet warms up. And they're not going to be able to stand it. So they want to merge their body, plus they want to live long because they weren't made to live over 6,000 years. So they want to merge with the machines and the computers, and those who don't want to do it are going to get eliminated. So that's what they're doing now. They're working their way up to that time.
Increasingly problematic. I would say, if you look, for example, at the new head of the FDA, who very few people have bothered to look into, Robert Califf, he's a former Google Health executive. Google Health has a joint venture with GlaxoSmithKline called Galvani Bioelectronics. I think the former head of that was Moncef Slaoui, who was in charge of Operation Warp Speed, and their focus is what they call bioelectronic medicine. which is, injectable nanotechnology that can manipulate your central nervous system. What are the implications of that? We have the person that just purchased Twitter, making a brain chip company. Mm-hmm. He's also a major contractor to the U.S. military. He has a major conflict of interest with Chinese Silicon Valley equivalents like Tencent.
He says, and I love this, he says, that's one of the reasons why I want to get off the planet. He says his work is to find a way to compete against the transhumanistic, folly. You don't believe that at all?
I don't buy it. No. Okay. If you look at that company, they had animal trials. Many of the monkeys that was tested and died after the brain chip was put in. If that were my company, I would reformulate everything or shut it down if it was going to kill that many animals, but it's already moved into human trials. I mean,
even though it's killing all the monkeys.
Well, it killed many monkeys. I forget the exact number, but a significant portion.
This is where it gets frightening.
Well, it's tied up with depopulation, right? You have this being sort of the new path of eugenics. And so, I don't think these people ultimately care about, how many people are left, right?
Smart and right.
Well, eugenics is...
you.
I mean, people like to act like eugenics disappeared, and it hasn't.
See, it's more black people, black and brown people on the planet than it is white people.
It's just rebranded. And if you look at the history, it's very clear and it's very disconcerting.
That's why everything you're seeing that is coming out of policy all over the world, all of the World Economic Forum seems so Malthusian.
Look at Canada, the medically assisted death. Originally, it was going to be for terminally ill people. Now people are pitching it to homeless people in Canada saying, you're too poor to live. Do you want to kill yourself?
How do we not remember what happened last time?
Well, I think some of these people, you look at the Rockefellers, they funded what happened last time. Yeah. A lot of that money that was used to set up the Nazi eugenics program came from the Rockefeller Foundation, and that's a matter of record. They've tried to go back and say, oh, we're sorry, but they're funding a lot of this stuff now.
Okay, so I think you're getting the impression that maybe you should prepare. Maybe you should help with a parallel economy. We may not be too far away from being able to undo some of the damage that has been done. But it's going to take all of us doing our part. We got to vote. We have to stand for the truth. We have to be a little bit more like our guest. Patriot Mobile is America.
Now, this is what gave him away. Talking about you got to vote. Now, when they wanted to be independent from England, and they wrote a document called the Declaration of Independence. They gave all the reasons why they should leave England and form their own United States. Well, they found the bonanza over here. They didn't want to share it with England. And that's why they really had the war. And they knew the people, they could handle the natives over here because they were naive. Now, just remember one thing. They try to pitch Bitcoin at you. If it's electronic money, all they got to do is flip the switch and turn it off. All they got to do is kill the electricity, and that's it for your money. If it's gold, you can't pay no bills with gold. You could barely buy groceries.
Because only Christian conservative mobile phone provider. They have been a force for conservative values. And when you're with Patriot Mobile, a portion of your bill goes to fund conservative causes and candidates who believe in things like the sanctity of life, freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment, values that made us the greatest country on earth in the first place. Their family and their business plans are affordable, and they have the same great coverage as the major carriers because these days, everyone is on the same set of cell towers. And when you add on top of it,
See, so they telling you the truth, but it's 10 years. And what can you do about it? And what made America great was the black man.
that fact that you're supporting shared values, you're winning. Win. PatriotMobile.com/Beck. Do it now. PatriotMobile.com/Beck or call 972-PATRIOT. Make sure you get free activation with the offer code BECK. You've read IBM and the Holocaust?
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with the relationship there.
He's a good dear friend of mine. And, it's the same thing. It's the same thing now. Giant corporations are in bed with all of this stuff. And someday they'll be hiding it and go, no, we didn't do anything with that. But I don't know.
I don't think they even have to now. I mean, if it really gets to the transhumanist point and they can just manipulate, this is an attempt to manipulate consciousness.
Yes.
Really. So, and memory and all of that. I mean, they don't have to even bother with it anymore once it gets to that point.
I talked to Ray Kurzweil once and I said, you put the nanotechnology, just tell me out here, Ray. I'm a science fiction writer. You put the nanotechnology into me and you control it. Not me, you control it. And I start speaking out about things that you and the powerful don't like. Why don't you just turn me off? Why don't you just, you know what? And all that nanotechnology, and I just die.
Sure.
And his response was, because we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, let's trust us. How has that gone for the, past 100 years or so? Right. And if organized crime are the people in charge, are you going to trust them? I mean, they want us to trust them. If you look at the World Economic Forum or even the Biden administration and a lot of their policy documents, one of their main focuses are rebuilding trust with the public. And it's not working.
Yeah, it's not.
But they may be looking at drastic interventions to make it work. And I think, if we're transhumanism to be shoehorned through, that could happen. And if you're seeing this, the sort of these mergers, because there's many of them, of Silicon Valley companies and big pharma, they're framing it as healthcare, but it's eugenics being framed as healthcare. And it's really
terrifying.
I mean, it's terrifying. It's crazy. There's a lot of words for it, but ultimately it has to be stopped. And unfortunately, COVID has set this precedent where it can be mandatory, or where you can lose your livelihood, where you can, not be able to travel. You can basically be placed under house arrest unless you agree to it.
If you don't, in the grand scheme of where we've all been upgraded, we're all part of the internet.
Upgraded.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the intention. That's how they're selling it to people. If you look at this, for example, the British Eugenics Society, where a lot of this came from, you look at someone like H.G. Wells, best known as a science fiction writer, but also a avowed eugenicist. He predicted that in 100 to 200 years, there would be two human races. There would be the upgraded, augmented elite who were intellectual and attractive and, were the ones that did everything. And then a dwarf-like, troll-like, squat underclass that eats bugs. And, for people that have been paying attention, it seems like, they're selling this as one way. It's all going to be a utopian thing if we all upgrade. I mean, that's how it's being framed, right? But if you look at how these people think, they don't want that. They're looking at feudalism and how do you create a class of slaves that cannot even cognitively rebel ever again.
It is why, these teachers unions said, we care about.
They done already did it. Did you hear me? They done already did it. My people, why are you playing these white people, Omar? Black light? Because my people scared to talk about it. You don't find none of them banging on the beast like me and showing you how he's a beast. At one time, Sinetta was doing it, but the people talked him out of it. And they went to banging on each other. And now we bang on each other all day. But we scared to say something about what's going on. We don't have no talk show. You strictly talking about the beast. A lot of y'all getting paid by the beast. And you don't want to interrupt that cash flow. But I'm not connected with the beast. Plus, I don't have that much following. Probably 2 or 3 people. But I haven't gained that much attention. So and then if I talk about stuff too heavy, then they will shadow ban me, whatever. But however you say it. So they I believe this young lady, this young cock, I believe she's getting played on by the older guy. He knows what's happening, but she must have a good following, and that's why he got her. What's his name? Glenn Beck. That's why he got her on his program. And then plus she gonna sell the book. So you got to recognize game when you see it.
Minorities and everything else, they did more damage to a whole generation of minorities more than they did white kids. But they put kids in general into the gears of the machine. I
live in South America. The lockdowns there were brutal. Everyone was under house arrest, basically. You were only allowed out of your house twice a week with papers that you had to show to police. Each paper was good for like roughly 3 hours. And my daughter goes to daycare. She's 4, and she was thankfully, shielded from a lot of this and was able to have interaction and stuff. But a lot of kids weren't. And a lot of kids her age and younger are nonverbal. They scream, like, instead of talking. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's devastating. And the fact that these people, act like it was for the children or for public health when, the evidence increasingly comes out and it wasn't, it was for something else. And I think it's increasingly becoming clear what that something else is and was.
What we're doing to farming, the ESG and World Economic Forum plan is evil. I mean, it seems an overused word. And it's one I swore off about 5 years ago. I said, I don't want to call things evil because it has to be evil is a different level. But when you're talking about controlling and dumbing down and enslaving and destroying, I don't know what other word to use for it. And they've gotten away with saying this is conspiracy theory. Well,
they just, I think that's, since the term really entered the American vernacular after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it's been used to basically claim that if you think powerful people get together to discuss how to advance their power and keep it at the expense of everyone else, and that they have any agency, you're crazy. It all has to be a coincidence. You know, they never have any bad intentions. The people that, you know, are the oligarchs that, you know, fund our politicians and have ties with intelligence and have monopolies and, you know, the technology that runs our lives and stuff like that. I mean, it's, you know, I think at this point you have to be quite naive to think that's actually the case, but.
So how do people like the new governor, I think, of Alberta, is standing up against ESG. And one of the first things she said was, anybody that brags about how they have controls and people in every government leader's office, if not the leader themselves, I don't think we should be doing any business with them. And ESG and
you want answers? Why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad? You want answers. I want the truth. And Brad, we just want the truth. It's simple. You can't handle the truth.
The election was not stolen by fraud. And I haven't seen anything since the election that changes my mind on that.
And World Economic Forum is out. How does somebody like that survive somebody like Klaus Schwab?
You know, I think, you know, it's not just Klaus Schwab. I think Klaus Schwab is sort of a man who is there to facilitate. I mean, let's talk about the World Economic Forum for a second and what it is and what it's not. They describe themselves as the premier promoter of public-private partnerships. For lack of a better word, that is fascism. So, and then you have the family history of Klaus Schwab, that his father ran a Nazi model company and funded the atomic bomb and all of that, and just very complicated stuff there. And you basically have him being in this position where he's promoting, you know, fascism on a global.
I mean, he's a white kitty cat away from being a James Bond supervillain.
Well, but I think that's, you know, they want everyone to focus on him and think that it's just him and just the World Economic Forum. There's other organizations that are promoting this too. And also a lot of the, you know, the Young Global Leader program, that's not exclusive to the World Economic Forum. You know, there's lots of other institutions with similar agendas, you know, that sort of are related to the World Economic Forum, which seeks, you know, not just public-private partnerships and fascism, but global governance. You know, there's a lot of these organizations seating their people in certain places. So how do you, you know, fight against this? I think there are sort of like factional infighting to an extent, and it's really hard to know how that's going at any given time. But there's an obvious effort by powerful interests to stop nationalist politicians from reaching the highest levels.
You think?
I think it's pretty clear. Yeah. So, you know, how do they stop that? I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, you look at the World Economic Forum, a lot of the banks are very involved. And when you know, are in bed with the banks and the banks are in bed with you, it's very hard to go against that in today's world. And, you know, they're making it even harder on the little people in Canada that protested with the you know, the trucker protest. They were deplatformed, not from social media, but from the financial system. And I think that's going to become increasingly common. It's already happening to a lot of people that I work with, taken off of PayPal, having trouble with their banks, Venmo. I mean, you know, and I think that's going to, you know, become increasingly commonplace, and that's how they're going to try and force compliance. And, you know, a big part of this, you have the move towards a central bank digital currency and all of that at the same time, which is programmable money. The state decides whether you save or you spend. They decide what you can and can't buy and all this stuff. And all the central banks, even on the, you know, in places like Russia, where Vladimir Putin talks a good game about nationalism and protecting our culture, they're going full steam ahead with that too.
It's the way you control a population.
Yeah. And I think all these governments are really interested right now in domestic control.
So what does America look like at the end? China?
That is the goal of a lot of people at the highest levels of Silicon Valley in our government. I would say, sure.
I have friends who are industrialists, and they would say to me 30 years ago, China's the new model. And I thought, that's a bad model. We don't want that. And they would just flippantly just say, China's the new model. It wasn't until 10 years later that I started going, wait a minute, they mean that sincerely, that how it works there, all of it, is coming here.
Yeah. That's been playing for a long time. We talked about Chinagate earlier. The origins of Silicon Valley are in that whole mix. And a lot of the most powerful people in our military industrial complex, including like Lockheed Martin, were involved with that and wanted that sensitive technology to go to China and undermine our national security. There was something going on there then, and I think we're increasingly seeing it now. I wrote an article in 2020 about the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. They basically say that in order to be competitive in artificial intelligence and secure economic and military hegemony for the United States, we have to go beyond China in terms of their implementation of surveillance technology, the use of artificial intelligence, moving away from private car ownership, which they refer to as a legacy system, in-person doctor visits, to the AI-powered alternative. This was in 2019, before COVID. COVID comes along.
2 years before that, I talked to the chairman of the board at General Motors, and he told me by 2030, we won't be making cars as you know them today. We'll be making fleets.
Yeah,
because people
it's
won't
Uber.
Be having,
it's Ubers you rent and you can't control where they go,
correct.
And they're only going to be in the smart cities. You're not going between cities anymore. No more road trips. No more, you decide, I want to go over here today. I want to drive 3 hours to see my family or whoever, my friends. That's over if these people win. And the National Security Commission on AI was run by Eric Schmidt, former head of Google. One of the co-chair was a top guy that works closely with Schmidt that was at the Department of Defense. And it's the intelligence community, the military, and Silicon Valley. And those are the people increasingly running. And they think if we don't go beyond China's surveillance system and mega city, smart city model, we will fail. And then you have people like Elon Musk coming in and saying, I'm going to take over Twitter for free speech. And then he also says, I want to make Twitter into basically like WeChat, which is, basically a surveillance app to use in China. That's for your finances, your social media, pretty much everything is on that app. They even call it the Everything app. And that's his model. And the parent company of that, Tencent, is one of Tesla's shareholders and, most active advisors. So is that data going to stay, that he's going to get from Twitter, the new Twitter, when it becomes a WeChat equivalent? Where's that going to go? I mean, there's a lot. If you look at, the China connection here, it's, when I was before I wrote the book, I didn't realize the extent of the overlap, but it's very concerning. You have people with major conflicts of interest running our national security policy on things like AI that have conflicts of interest with China. And Eric Schmidt just wrote a book with Henry Kissinger, and these guys basically argue in order to avoid a cataclysmic war with China, we have to make good and cooperate with China. And the model for that is basically, the World Economic Forum. I mean, they argue the same thing, global governance and technocracy, following the China model here. And it's very against everything most Americans are accustomed to. But they're, I guess, finding ways to manufacture consent for it, whether the justification is climate change, it's COVID, it's a food and energy crisis that's been manufactured. Whatever will stick, they'll use. But the problem is you're having the people that control Silicon Valley behind this. They control where most people get their information, where most people socialize today. And they're increasingly censoring people from platforms. They're waging basically a war on dissent that I've written about a few times. And it's getting, increasingly Orwellian to the point where, they'll label you misinformation or, this is disinformation. But, the Biden administration, if their war on domestic terror advances the way they've written it out, you say the wrong thing or you disagree with the state even or the official narrative, you're, inciting violence. You're potentially a domestic violent extremist.
Right.
And that's happened in history before, not necessarily in the United States, but other countries. And, it's pretty clear that once that type of policy gets implemented, things go downhill very quickly.
Do you have hope at all that if the Republicans could win, it at least slows it down? I mean, I think people in the Republican, there's clearly people who go to Washington and actually believe it, and then are turned, or they go to Washington, they're already a dirtbag and they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And then there's a few that go and stand and are trying to hold the line.
But they're a minority.
A big minority.
Or they get forced out.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, Ron Johnson, right? Was the one that challenged a lot of COVID narratives.
Yes.
And I mean, even mainstream media, NPR, is supposed to be objective, says, oh, he spreads conspiracy theories and his challenger's a rising star. And, you know, I mean, they're very clear about who they favor and who they don't. And if they don't want you to win, they'll gerrymander your district. They'll do so. I mean, there's lots of tools and that they can use to prevent you from staying in office, and who knows what we'll see in the midterm elections. But ultimately, you know, those type of people that are willing to stand their ground and actually fight for the American people are very few. Even in, it doesn't really matter what party you're talking about. It's very small number when you consider the amount of votes needed to pass.
Now, that's the problem. The American people. The American people is a figmentation of the white man's imagination. America is a religion that you shouldn't get baptized by, because it's crooked. It was crooked from the foundation when it came over here and got us as slaves. I mean, when it came to our motherland and got us as slaves and dummied us down, took away our names, our identity, basically. And we don't even know who we really are. So don't subscribe to being American. Y'all say y'all believe in God, believe in Jesus. Christians. Well, we remember in the Testament of Jesus, the New Testament, the Romans occupied, you know, all of Palestine, and the Jews were the overseers, the boule, and the gatekeepers for the Romans. And they crucified him. They say they crucified him. I don't believe it, but they tell you they crucified him. And when you read the Bible, Matthew, Luke, John, all of them say that they wanted to kill Jesus. You know. And then they went over there and bombed Palestine up, Bethlehem up, and they didn't give Christmas. They didn't have no Christmas over there. But y'all was over here celebrating Christmas with Santa Claus. You didn't hear Jesus mentioned too much. So the enemy tested y'all. He did it at that particular time to test to see how deaf, dumb, and blind you were. So what side of Allah's hand are you going to be sitting on? You're going to be sitting on the right hand or the left hand? You preachers, you black preachers, what side you going to be sitting on? See, that's the reason why Master Farad came over here looking like a white man, came to the black bottom, because black people, even today, listen to white people more than they listen to a black person. That's why I'm playing this right here. She's testifying to what I've been saying. You go back and see my videos. I've been talking about what she's just not talking about, Epstein and everything. But they're talking about it now because they know that you ain't gonna do nothing. All your tax money is going over to Israel and the war machine. And the infrastructure in what they call America is deteriorating. They won't put no money in the infrastructure. So you are aiding and abetting criminal activities. Now don't think that God is a spook, Allah is a spook up in the sky. That's what the Arabs want you to think. That's what the Christians want you to think. No. He's still here. Out of sight, out of mind. So that's the old saying right there. Out of sight, out of mind. Think about it.
Pass certain legislation. So I think ultimately the way out of this is for the American people to realize that yes, this is a fight between good and evil, but if you're looking for the good guys, stop looking at people that are put on the TV screens in front of you and start looking at your neighbors.
Yeah.
And
the answer is so clear. Local.
Yes,
Local.
Absolutely.
Well, they're telling the truth right there. But real local is your black brothers and sisters that need to unite, especially here in Detroit. We 77% black, last I counted. But we can't unite. Maybe 50% of that 77% is corrupted and paid off by the devil. Especially the black preachers. So you got to quit thinking about being Democrat and Republic. Think about being God's people. Think about, are you God's people or not?
This is really us versus them. It's not left versus right anymore. Yes. We are so far beyond that.
Yeah.
Really.
And it's amazing and very heartening how many people that I know and I interview that we would have been against each other 15 years ago. We would have say, you're, and now it's like, no, forget all of that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's heartening that people.
Now, see, the white people, they always unite. They may argue and fight with each other, but they end up uniting, especially when it comes against you. And they want to say it ain't about color, but it is. And so the black man got to unite with kind. Kind unite with kind. You know. You got, just like you got different breeds of dogs. You know. Different kind of dogs. Now you could crossbreed a Cocker Spaniel with a Chihuahua and get something else. You could even crossbreed a Chihuahua with a cat. But naturally, kind go to kind. You know, chickens be with chickens, even though there's ducks. They got feathers, eagles with feathers, but chickens with chickens. You know, and that's how it should be. That's how God made it to be. That's why you got transhumanism, because the devil or the Caucasian want to be your God. See, you're the original man of the planet Earth. So I'm playing this video right here to get this message closer to you. You know, you'll listen to what the white people say. But you go on any black person's station, and they not, especially the ones that like to debate, like Sinetta, very seldom do they debate with a white person. So have a white senator on your station. Will they come on your station, Sinetta, and debate with one of the affluent brothers, one of the affluent scholars? No, we talk stuff to one another, but we scared to bang on the white man. Now, Brother Khalid went overboard. Donald Elijah Muhammad would never be pleased with when Khalid was on field. He wouldn't have been pleased with that. But that was an opportunity to get us further divided from each other. Because Khalid was flamboyant, electrifying in his presentations, and he gave Mr. Farrakhan a run for his money. And the Nation of Islam was further, is further and further apart. Now we still banging on each other. See, there's a difference between telling the truth. I mean, you could tell the truth and be gentlemanly about it. You know, you ain't got to get all crazy like young Pharaoh. But Mr. Farrakhan, he would never be interviewed by a brother that's opposing to him, you know. But Khalid messed up, man. Just like Malcolm messed up. So we're so divided because everybody going for the personality and not for the fruit that they bear, not for what they do for the community. Because Farrakhan nor Khalid took the place left off. I mean, took up where Honorable Elijah Muhammad left off. In other words, where's the airplanes? Where's the boats? They just talking. you know. So none of them represented the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because you would do the works of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But we so far apart, we so far disunited that it's almost impossible for us to unite. So that's why Allah, you know, that's why he letting things happen the way they happen. You know? And some of you gonna get caught up in Allah's chastisement. I may get caught up in his chastisement before it's over with. Because you so divisive and disunited that you're in bed with the devil, trying to get that money. And he ain't gonna have no money in a minute. There ain't gonna be no money. Everything gonna be electric. You know, digital. That's when you're gonna be a slave right there. Gonna go right back into slavery. And if you do, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says it's gonna be another 6,000 years before you get the opportunity to come out of slavery again. So Master Farad, he does what he please. He could let you to teach you a lesson, to let you go another 6,000 years, but this time worse. Or he could take you off the planet with the white man. There's no guarantees. It's all up to you. Either you're going to be Allah's people, we're going to be Allah's people, or we're going to be the devil's people. Now the white man, he fighting for himself. Because when he talk, you can tell that he haven't included us. He say, and the minorities. Man, we not minorities on the whole planet. And we're getting to be not minorities here in America. The most of the planet belongs to the black. I mean, you know, it's mostly black, brown, red, and yellow. He the minority. But he wants you to help him fight. Just like we helped him fight in the Revolutionary War, we helped him fight in the Civil War, we helped him fight World War I, we helped him fight World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Spanish American, Afghanistan, Iraq. You know, we over there now, Africa fighting our own people. That's the way to whittle our numbers down. We will be the minority if we keep on doing what we're doing. So I done came to this conclusion, man. My generation, you know, back in the 60s, we were the baddest brothers it was in history. Y'all too scary, man. Y'all too scary. Y'all got any excuse, man. Jesus was a revolutionary. He was gonna take some heads because he told I forget which one of them. He told him to go and pawn he said, go and get a sword from the pawn shop. We're gonna cut some heads. But when he seen that they was outnumbered because they had to fight the temple guards plus the Romans. And there was only about 12 of them. And he said, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. What that means is you got to use your mind. And them brothers, them guys were following him, they was dumb. 12 disciples. They was dumb, man. He had to explain everything to them. He couldn't catch on to what he was saying. And then when they was getting ready to crucify him, they played like they didn't know him. No, I don't know that brother.
People are waking and starting to come together. Question is, do we make it fast enough? I've been saying for a while, this is going to be a photo finish. I don't know which one's going to.
I don't think anyone really does. And I think it comes down to how much responsibility people are willing to take for their own lives and how far communities are willing to go to ensure that they're self-reliant in the face of what we're facing. Well, if the banks are deplatforming people, you can't use their financial system. Are you going to go to the CBDC land where eventually you won't be able to spend money without like a microchip in your hand and all of this stuff? There's obvious red lines people can't cross. How are you going to feed your family? How are you going to keep your house heated in winter? Basic needs. I think we should probably be taking some lessons from the Amish, to be honest. I think, I think they got stuff right.
That the Amish, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. We have outsourced our needs to corporations that want to enslave us.
So we have to start producing our own stuff at a local level. It's all about exit and build, and that's what we have to do. And the more people that do that, the better off we will be. The real question is how accustomed are Americans to convenience, and will we be enslaved by that convenience or not? And I think that's the ultimate.
So far, we have been.
A lot of people have been.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about Bitcoin.
So I'm, not necessarily well-versed on cryptocurrency. I do, I like Bitcoiners because we tend to see a lot in common about, the state of government today and the Federal Reserve, for example, central bank digital currency, and all of that. But because I'm not particularly well versed in it, I don't like to tell people how to spend their money. It's a very individual decision.
Do you think it can survive?
I think the central banks, the bankers, and the government will do everything they can to prevent a currency that threatens their power from actually being able to be used. And I think we're already seeing major efforts to make that the case. They can make it illegal to, turn it into something else, illegal to use as tender. They're looking at a lot of different options. But, some Bitcoiners, despite that, think is totally possible, but I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that. I personally have, in terms of my finances, some people donate to my work in crypto. I have a little bit of that, but, I'm personally looking at trying to put as much of my money as I can in things that will keep me and my family self-sufficient, come what may, which in my case included investing in land. So I'm not renting, I own where I live. I have enough land to produce what my family needs in terms of food, stocking up on things that I can't produce, things like that. That's where my money is personally going, but I am not in the business of telling people, giving financial advice beyond that. Sure. But, if the goal is to develop parallel systems so we're not dependent on the systems of the people trying to enslave us, whatever you think is a good way to get from point A to point B, that's probably where your money should be going. If Bitcoin's a part of that, if you feel that way, good for you. And if not, good for you too. I think ultimately what we need to do is, try and create something so that we can be resilient and not have to, because the system is just so unacceptable. It's really not just it's not just against freedom and all sorts of other values, right? It's against nature. It's against life, really. And so, if you're going to support that, I think people have to realize the consequences that come with that and exactly what it means when you are willing to give yourself over that kind of system, the implications of that. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that or take the time to think about it. And I think they should.
Are you God-driven? Is God a center of you?
Yeah, but I tend to think of maybe God differently than most Christians. I don't really see it as a person or as a man. I see it as maybe the universe or the creative force,
right.
The energy that.
Reason why she's saying that she don't believe that God is a man, because she know that the black man is the original man and it's the God and it's Allah. We are the Caucasians' father. She know that. She's very, very intelligent. And she's telling the truth up until this point right here. See, they can't let you know, black man, black woman. They can't let you know who you are. Now, some of them think that if we know that who we are, that we'll do them. If they give us the opportunity to rule, that we'll do them like they did us. But it's not in our nature. It's not in our nature. We are the most peculiar and unusual people. I'm talking about the brothers and sisters that ancestors or forefathers were slaves here in America with the white man's name. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about the ones over here. We different from all of them because we're the only ones that could survive after all that we went through and still going through. We still here after the pandemic. We still here, we kind of crazy. We crazy and we deaf, dumb, and blind. But we didn't never just started killing them like the Israel is killing the Palestinians, just killing them, and won't stop and ain't gonna stop. No, we could do that. We could have did it, but no. We tried to the white man realize, that we are human. He'll never think of us as his equal. Never. Except not all, but it's some that do know who we are and are sympathetic and are, but they're not willing to die for us. There was only one white guy that died for the cause of the black man. That was John Brown. And he actually gave his life.
I can go with George Lucas and the Force. I mean,
right.
It's the
There's
same
a lot of different ways, to look at it. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if you're looking at humanity, what do you like about humanity? It's the creativity. Mm-hmm. It's the vivaciousness. That's the stuff that I think we're fighting for. And a lot of the guys behind this want to eliminate that. I think a lot of transhumanism is aimed at creating like a drone-like workforce that will never be able to challenge their working conditions or ask for a bigger piece of the pie. And it's amazing to me that more people on the left don't see that if they're all about workers' rights and unionizing. All right, you have a chip in your brain. How's workers' rights going to go?
And how are the unions in bed furthering all of this?
Well, I would say that you just have to look back to the unions, back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and how organized crime took them over. And that hasn't really changed. So the big ones, I mean, so it's, a lot of those guys over the years have evolved to support these types of policies because it's more control and money. And what does the mob love more than anything else, right?
Why is the left, I've always held more libertarian views. When it comes to social issues, I don't care who you marry. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you love. That's no business of mine. Shouldn't be any business of the government. That was a progressive idea to have a marriage license from the government. But we fought this. And I remember saying to my daughter, who was in college at the time, she said, "Dad, it's about love." And I said, "I don't think it is. I think it's about control." And this argument, if we play it out, you can't stop polygamy. You can't change one factor without changing other factors. And everyone said these things were crazy. We are now transitioning kids because there's no gender identity anymore. We are sexualizing our youngest kids. What?
Let me come in here. You see how he put polygamy in with transgender? Like polygamy is something unusual. No, the prophets, Abraham was a polygamist. There was a lot of Solomon, it was a whole bunch of prophets in the Bible had was polygamous. But now we going back to Sodom and Gomorrah now when he talking about transgender and homosexuality and bestiality. But you don't find the preachers talking about Sodom and Gomorrah no more. Matter of fact, they're going along with it. Because half of them is homosexual.
Where is that coming from? It's such a force.
If your ultimate goal is total control, you need to have a population that has no national identity, that has no identity, period. That identity can be fluxed and can be moved whenever convenient for the people on top. If people have an identity and know who they are and know where they stand, they're a lot harder to control. And I think if you make all of that fluid at every level, it's a lot easier to exert your will.
Now she getting right down to the real nitty gritty now. She just heard her, right? If we don't know who we are. We call ourselves, the black man calls himself African American. Now my wife, she was working at a job, bless her soul, that I think her foreman or her superior used to live in South Africa. They used to call them Bormans. I don't know but anyway, he was born in South Africa, a white dude. So he came over here and started working. And he told his co-workers that he was an African American. He was born in Africa, South Africa, came over here to America. So he's an African American. He's a white cat. What is your nationality, black man? You're the original Asiatic black man, God of the universe. Cream of the planet Earth. Cream always rises to the top.
Over them because, you know, they don't have their feet firmly on the ground, right?
I've thought of this several times during this podcast. I think this is the most powerful interview I've ever done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I hope people listen and open their mind enough to go, that can't be true. I mean, I usually start my investigations on things going, no way, it can't be. I don't do that as often now because I'm seeing, oh yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
Who were you before you started doing this? I mean, did you believe these things? Or have you found these things going, oh my gosh, and one leads to another?
Well, I guess you could say that when I was younger in my teen years, I had a major trust issue with adults. And I just had a hard time. I just didn't believe what I was told a lot of the time. I had to figure it out for myself and all sorts of things. I guess that's sort of a lot of some teenagers are like that. But I, you know, around the time I was in university, the last year or two, I sort of figured out a lot of things about American history that's sort of hidden from us. The government isn't exactly there to help necessarily.
I don't know how we went from, hey, government is like fire, with George Washington saying, if you're in control of it, it's good. If it's out of control, it'll burn you, to, hey, we're from the government. We'll educate your kids. How could you possibly think a government is going to raise kids who say, be skeptical of us?
Yeah, well, it's not, you know, look at who has taken over our education system. You go back to things like the Rockefeller family or their role in healthcare. There's a lot of oligarch families that have very specific agendas that have really taken over government policy, and it's been like that for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And they're not elected. No one put them in charge. Actually, a lot of people used to hate the Rockefeller family until, you know, they started a major PR campaign to rebrand themselves as philanthropists that a lot of other unpleasant people have since followed. You know, the long-term consequences of that we are seeing today. But anyway, in terms of my background, you know, I was, you know, 21, 22, and just looking around, you know, I'm 33, so I'm a millennial, right? And most people my age just, you know, I could see a lot of this stuff, like we're too dependent on corporations that have a lot of nasty agendas or do bad things. There's a lot of issues, a lot of illegal wars, no accountability at the highest levels of government. You know, if people my
Don't you agree we need voter ID and clean election rolls? Well, your Judicial Watch is in federal court right now fighting to make sure your elections will be fair and honest. Follow Judicial Watch on YouTube.
You know, if people my age don't start doing something, it's going to get really bad. And most, you know, most people are like, stop talking about that. I have Netflix and beer, so I don't care. Everything's fine as long as, you know, I'm comfortable, basically. You know, screw your politics or screw your concerns. And I just,
then wait,
I left the U.S. after that.
How can these same group of people, that generation, claim that, no, you have to be an activist. You have to be involved in climate change. And, you know, I'm going to sit down and glue myself to a wall like a moron.
Yeah, well, that's the activism that's put in front of young people today, and they're being told that's what activism is, and that's the activism that's sort of in vogue because it's shown and treated by mainstream media as sticking it to the man.
Right.
These people throwing tomato soup on paintings, but you look at those groups, I think they're called Just Stop Oil. They're funded by the Getty and Rockefeller families. And the Rockefeller family, made their money off of oil, but, they have a long-time interest in eugenics and funding.
Correct.
People that basically helped create this sort of new environmental movement that downplays pollution and plays up carbon dioxide. And that's all we should be worried about. And, it's the biggest, I think the quote from the Club of Rome is the biggest enemy of humanity is man, and furthering, that narrative.
See, carbon dioxide. See, the black man is made out of carbon. His melanin is carbon. He ain't got to worry about it because we are natural to the planet. We come from the planet. The planet is us. The universe is us. But the Caucasian doesn't have carbon in them. That's why they lack melanin. So they're the only ones got to worry about it because it really is going to, the atmosphere really is going to change, but it always does this every so often. It's like the seasons change. Every so often, the seasons change. Like you got summer, winter, spring, and fall. Well, that goes with the solar system. There's a summer, winter, spring, and fall in the solar system. But it always been like that. See, they only been here 6,000 years. So they don't know nothing about that. But the furthest that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that we could go back is 76 trillion years. 76 trillion. I didn't say no billion. I didn't say no million. I said 76 trillion.
Not that, it's not the corporations that pollute or even the U.S. military is, even by, climate change metrics, the biggest contaminator of, the planet and all of that. It's not about those guys. It's just about the regular people. But really what it's about is controlling how much energy people can use. And if you control how much energy a household can use, you can control their economic activity. You also control how big their family can get. And I think that's ultimately what it's about. It's not about the environment for these people. And a lot of it is, Wall Street.
Yeah, because the black man breeds I think I don't forget, I can't think of the percentage now, but the white man at this point in time is at 0% of reproducing itself. So that's why they want abortion and all like that. Because more black people, see, she's telling it, but she's telling it in a code. See, black people, they're subject to having an abortion if they can't afford, a baby. And they having them at 14 and 13 years old, but we still multiplying. We ain't dying, we multiplying. And so, but they're not. They was only meant to be here for 6,000 years. They call that the 6th day in the Bible. On the 7th day, which is now, their time is up and they know it. So they're going out with a bang and they want to take y'all with them. So when they talk, she know that by them trying to take the black man out, that they're going to get took out faster too. You know? But the white man is so afraid of us populating the earth that every time he do an experiment on us, it backfire on him. But he's panicking right now. And y'all could tell it, you know, in the way he's acting. Y'all could tell it in the way he's acting, but y'all so busy banging on each other. Now is the time, black man and black woman, to unite. Black man, love your black woman and protect her. You know.
Driven, you look at the United Nations, a lot of the people they put in charge of climate change policy. You have Mark Carney, former head of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, I believe. He's one of the guys that came in to rescue HSBC when they were caught money laundering for Mexican drug cartels. Not exactly a good guy, and it's very unlikely that he is driven by concern about the environment. And then the other person is Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York and billionaire guy. And so these are the people crafting the solutions. And just like COVID, you don't have time to think about what we're telling you. You just have to accept these solutions, because if you don't, something really, really bad will happen. And it's sort of a similar narrative to what, you know, was played out with COVID and
everything, guns, cars, everything.
Yeah. So, you know, people are being, it's fear driven to get people to accept policies they otherwise wouldn't accept because they're told this cataclysmic event is just down the line. And trust us, again, is the conclusion of that. So, you know, there's people that agree with the narrative about climate change, and there's people that don't. And I'm not trying to really get in that space when I talk about this stuff. I'm trying to point out that the solutions are coming mostly from Wall Street, and they're things like carbon markets. They're things like debt for climate swaps, which back in the day used to be debt for land swaps, not about climate change, you know, about other stuff. And then you have people.
And back further than that, it used to be slaves for debt swaps.
Like Larry Fink of BlackRock and Michael Bloomberg and Mark Carney coming together in something like GFAN saying, why don't we give Wall Street direct control of the IMF and the World Bank for climate change? You know, how can anyone on the left that's worried about climate change sign off on that? Why don't they talk about planting trees? Why isn't Bill Gates the largest, you know, like private landowner in the US now planting trees like crazy if he's so worried about carbon dioxide? You know, he poo-poos the whole idea of planting trees as a way to combat climate change. It's just carbon markets and going to electric vehicles and all of this stuff. But electric vehicles necessitates mass mining. And a lot of that mining is in places that use child labor, or it's going to be so environmentally destructive you totally destroy the developing world, which, you know, these people on the left supposedly want to protect. You're going to totally destroy the environment. I live in the south of Chile in the Andes. It's one of the only areas in Chile that's still like forested and really nice, not polluted water, any of that. Most of the mining in Chile is historically in the north, which has become very polluted and has a lack of water, among other things. And now the mines are starting to move south because of this demand for more and more minerals for, you know, electric vehicles and all of that. A lake that used to be used for tourism, there was some mineral, I forget what it is, discovered in the lake shore, and then the water just disappears one season, and now it's ready to be mining right next to a national park. I used to live and work in Peru. They were talking about putting a uranium mine next to Machu Picchu and all types of stuff. I mean, this is the mining stuff is not being talked about, and, you know, electrical vehicles are being marketed as necessary, but it's going to come at a massive, massive cost. And I think that, you know, again, the environmental movement is focused on carbon dioxide. If they were really worried about the environment, they would also educate people on how destructive this type of mining is and what it does to the people who live there and the environment, and including in protected areas. There's a lot of species in this particular area of Chile where I live that are only there, and they've you know, been there for thousands of years, and they'll not exist if a lot of this mining goes forward. But if you ask people like Bill Gates, for example, who has a joint venture with most of the other titans of Silicon Valley called Cobalt Metals, they say all of the world's reserves of lithium, cobalt, and nickel must be completely mined if we even want to get close to the electrical vehicle revolution. So that means digging up the entire Andes, including areas that are national parks right now. And even if they do, with all the reserves that we know that we have, you're not going to be able to reproduce the amount of private cars in use today. It's going to be way less cars. And so they're just going to be, I mean, the model's already sort of been out there. They fielded it in the UK recently. You can't drive out of your district and all of that stuff. It's going to be much more controlled, the freedom of movement. Well, it's not really going to be freedom of movement. It's going to be controlled movement.
Last question. Are you optimistic?
So that's a tricky question. You know, sometimes you're working and writing on this stuff. I mean, it's ups and downs. Sometimes you feel inspired. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, you know, you just want to face palm. You know, but ultimately there's really no other way to be except to believe totally in a better future. I mean, we have to be totally committed to that if we're going to do it and do it quickly. And, you know, I have a lot of hope that Americans, when things get really rough, will come together, at least most of us.
I think so too.
You know, but, you know, in the environment we're in right now, I think it's incumbent on everyone, no matter how small or big your platform is, to speak up about what is happening. I think we are past the time about worrying about what people say about you, about at work or at home or wherever.
The president gave a speech last night, and I don't remember what he was calling people, and I thought that is so, I am so far beyond caring about names and labels that anybody, you know, and I think there are more and more people around the world that are like, I don't care. I don't care what you call me. I don't care, you know, what you do. I just know what's true, and I'm just not going there with you.
Well, the government wants to define what is true and what is not. I wrote a recent article about that in explaining some of the calls to basically make it such, and it's, you know, even if they try and do that and they try and say, this is the state, you know, the state is defining truth, and if you deviate from that, you are inciting violence, and all of that. But the problem is people at a visceral level gravitate toward the truth. So they hear it and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Or they look at the sourcing, or they investigate for themselves and they realize what is true and what is not. So, you know, the state, Silicon Valley, there's really not that much space between them, to be honest, at this point. You know, they can try and censor and manipulate and whatever, but ultimately people are going to gravitate towards what is true. And there's going to be a point where they're not going to be able to really, the tools they have now will not work. And I think a lot of that is that time will come once people stop trying to use these platforms that they are manipulating and start just going out and talking to people they know. We have to get offline, and we have to do it quickly. Maybe even get back, you know, circulating in print stuff that's printed. I mean, we really have to stop being so dependent on these platforms that they're obviously manipulating.
Now, what the black man got to do, is get a YouTube that he control. We call it WeTube. Yeah, black man, black woman. Because we don't control nothing. But we are inventive people, creative people. We built the pyramids. We had electricity at that time too, of the pyramids. So what we need to do is use our ESP. We don't need a contraption to talk to each other. We could talk to each other mentally. Y'all say, what are you talking about? Well, it's in your own Bible. It's in The New Testament, Jesus. Down with Elijah Muhammad called it the radio in the head. Jesus, in many paragraphs or many chapters in the Bible, it will say, and he knew what they were thinking. Jesus knew what they were thinking. Because he knew that somebody was going to betray him. When they was having the Last Supper, and he wouldn't call his name out, but he knew it was Judas. He said, one of y'all will drop a dime on me. And then he told, I think it was either Peter. He said, you will disown me when rooster crows or something. I don't know if it was the rooster, but anyway, when the cock crows, yeah, he said you act like you will act like you don't know me. He was reading their minds, man. He was reading the future. That's what prophets do.
I think everyone knows about it, or they're censoring people from, and they're using it to profile you. You know, stop giving them your data and start getting in the real world and telling people what's what. I mean, they may call you crazy, but the stakes are too high to not do it. That's how I feel.
Thank you.
All right, now, it's not over, but it's about to be over. It's about to be over in a minute.
Welcome to the Renaissance, and welcome to this edition of Slaves as Crude Oil and Stock Exchange Today, Part 1. Recall that during the transatlantic and trans-Sahara slave trades, the Negroes were like stocks and bonds and crude oil, the same way they sell crude oil today. They tell you the crude oil price has risen and it has fallen. It used to be Negro slaves. They will tell you that the price of slaves had changed or things like that. Today, most people see the slave trade as some intellectual or academic concept, but this is not correct.
All right, we're going to pick it up next time we meet. That's where stocks and bonds come from, y'all. Wall Street. Wall Street came about by Negro slaves. They weren't considered nothing but stocks. And I read to you about the bonds. Now we get into the economics of why you will always be a slave. And we're going to go, we're going to say this for another video, but we want to touch on why the Bible talks about interest, about usury. But we're going to shut this one down. And until another day, keep your radar up, your antennas up, because I may pop up at any time the way things going now. But if you subscribe to me, you know, on that notification bell, it should let you know when I go live or when another video will show. I want y'all to look at that picture, y'all. That's why things are going the way they're going now, just because they had us as a prisoner of war, made us deaf, dumb, and blind. That's the worst thing you can do to a human, is take away his identity. Assalamu alaikum.